next, behind mansion walls.
It was just a horrific murder.
Rich kids look for new kicks.
The crime was every parent's worst nightmare.
And play a deadly game.
I think they principally did it for thrills.
Chicago, the Roaring '20s. America's barons of enterprise are making money, hand over fist. It's a happy time for the city's elite. But on May 22nd, 1924, millionaire businessman Jacob Franks fights a sick feeling in his stomach.
Dear sir, as you no doubt know by this time, your son has been kidnapped.
His 14-year-old son, Bobby, has disappeared while walking home.
He is at present well and safe.
Now, there's a ransom demand for $10,000. Or else.
Should you, however, disobey any of our instructions, his death will be the penalty.
$10,000 then would be the equivalent of over $100,000 today. While most parents will pay anything to save their child's life, wealthy parents hold much larger checkbooks, and the Franks would seem to have no trouble ponying up.
Young Bobby Franks had the world at his feet. After a school day at Harvard Boys, he'd walk home to the family mansion in elite Kenwood. His father is a retired industrialist and president of the Chicago Public Library. The Franks want for nothing. But status and wealth can't stop heartbreak or murder.
The crime was every parent's worst nightmare.
Just hours after the Franks received the ransom note, Bobby's dead body is found in Wolf Lake, a remote parkland outside the city. He is beaten and horribly disfigured, as if acid has eaten his flesh.
What could horrify parents more than the thought that their child, simply walking home from school, could be picked up and murdered?
The Franks are devastated and confused. First, the ransom note. Then, before they have a chance to respond, their son turns up dead.
To investigators, it just doesn't add up. Why would a kidnapper kill a hostage before they get their hands on the money? Who could possibly be behind this?
There is one clue at the murder scene, a pair of eyeglasses. They don't belong to the boy, so whose are they? Then there's Wolf Lake itself. Who would know it well enough to hide a body here? Police discover that it's a haven for bird watchers.
The thing about bird watching, it is a genteel preoccupation of the leisure class going back centuries.
One particular bird watcher catches their attention. Another rich teenager, Nathan Leopold.
Nathan Leopold came out of one of the most wealthy families in all of Chicago.
His father owns the biggest paper mill in Illinois. At 19, Nathan is heir to a grand fortune. So the last thing he needs is ransom money. But rich victims demand quick justice. So police explore all avenues, no matter how unlikely. They interview the wealthy heir.
But on the 21st, I was with Richard Loeb and a couple of girls. We went for a country drive.
As expected, Leopold has a convincing alibi for the day of the murder. Like so many rich kids, he was wooing girls, in his flashy car. The girls were strangers, he tells police. Conveniently, he can't remember their names. But he does identify his good pal and driving buddy, Richard Loeb. Another teen aristocrat with impeccable credentials.
Richard Loeb was a popular, cocky, good-looking guy, a guy who liked to hang out with girls, very privileged kid, and probably spoiled because of the wealth the family had.
Richard's father is a vice president of American retail icon Sears Roebuck. Two rich kids picking up girls, nothing unusual there. It seems like a dead end.
But behind mansion walls, what is murder to you and me can be just a parlor game. The cops have no idea they're being played for fools, that a killer is toying with them.
In 1920 Chicago, gangsters aren't the only residents with a taste for murder.
They bludgeoned to death a 14-year-old Bobby Franks.
They take out hydrochloric acid and pour it over Bobby Franks in the hopes of disguising the body.
It was just a horrific murder.
For months before the slaying of a young aristocrat, two rich teenagers are plotting.
The two of them are said to have had a sexual relationship with one another.
I don't get the same thrill out of this as you, Dickie.
But sex is just one secret Nathan Leopold and Richard Loeb are keeping to themselves.
Richard Loeb would promise to provide sex for Nathan Leopold in return for Nathan Leopold's agreeing to participate in a certain number of crime adventures with Richard Loeb.
They're bourgeois criminals, using their superior class and education to outsmart the law.
Leopold, he had a measured IQ of 200. He graduated from the University of Chicago at 18.
Richard Loeb has a passion for crime novels.
Richard Loeb had a fantasy life. He really liked detective stories. He was pushed into the classics, but his real love was the detective stories.
This doesn't excite me. It excites you. Yeah, well, I know what excites you.
I've seen it often. When wealth gives you any plaything at the snap of your fingers, everyday life seems dull as dishwater. Excitement comes when you start playing games with society's taboos.
The boys had committed increasingly ambitious crimes.
What are you proposing?
Arson, car theft, but yet they hadn't committed a crime that really they thought matched their own intellectual potential.
Loeb's passion for crime stories incites them further.
They wanted to commit the perfect crime, a crime that would be an elaborate crime, a crime that would make people say, wow, what a crime.
And such others. Should you, however, disobey any of our instructions, even slightly.
So the finest education money can buy is perverted into kidnap and murder for an amusing goal: committing the perfect crime.
I think every once in a while, the wrong people meet. And I think that's true for Leopold and Loeb.
In the days following little Bobby's death, Leopold and Loeb's game is in full play.
He was arrogant, selfish.
Part of the fun is to be involved in the investigation. Loeb offers his opinions to journalists.
I mean, if I was going to murder anybody, he's exactly the kind of cocky son of a bitch that I would pick.
I think Loeb inserted himself into the story by talking to journalists, both as a way to stay close to it and try to get information from them.
But these whiz kids aren't quite as smart as they think. First, the body is found before they have a chance to collect the ransom.
The boys were convinced that it would take weeks to find the body. It will have deteriorated to the point where identification would be very difficult. As it turns out, however, the body is found the very next morning.
And one of them has made a schoolboy error. Police have been investigating those glasses.
The lenses apparently were unremarkable. The frames were not remarkable, but the hinges on the frames were remarkable.
Old-fashioned detective work brings a breakthrough. Only 3 people in Chicago were prescribed glasses with such an extravagant hinge. And one of them is none other than Nathan Leopold.
Did you lose your glasses?
No,
Have you got them?
not on me.
For that to be discovered so quickly at a time when there's, of course, no computer, no DNA, none of the other crime methods was really extraordinary.
Do you know how busy I am? I've got an appointment at 3 o'clock.
As suspicion falls on Leopold and his friend Loeb, police challenge their alibi. Perhaps they weren't picking up girls the day of the murder, but their victim.
The turning point in the investigation probably was when the Nathan Leopold family chauffeur came forward to police. He could prove that Nathan Leopold's car was sitting in his garage the entire day in which the crime was committed.
Far from exonerating young Leopold, the chauffeur helps tighten a noose around his neck.
After you.
Nathan Leopold and Richard Loeb were telling investigators that they were picking up girls in Nathan Leopold's car. Cannot be true. They were lying. Their alibi is not accurate.
It's no good holding out, Richard. Leopold is the owner of those glasses. Your alibi has fallen apart.
Experiencing the kind of interrogation he relished as an avid crime reader, Richard Loeb crashes to earth. He realizes they haven't pulled off the perfect crime.
Come clean.
In fact, one imperfection follows the next. Typewriters are like people. They leave fingerprints with every letter. The ransom note was pecked on an Underwood machine, just like Nathan Leopold's.
It's the sitting room.
The glasses, the false alibi, the ransom note trace. Who's smartest now?
They thought the police were dullards, not in their league. Leopold and Loeb made their own rules and their own morality. Now the cops look like they're winning this game. But when it comes to trial, never underestimate the power of money.
Before the term thrill kill is coined, there's Leopold and Loeb. 2 wealthy teenagers who want to commit the perfect crime for fun. But they miscalculate so badly, they're arrested within days.
This is out of control. Do you even know who I am?
And now, they're spilling their sordid story.
Okay, I'll tell you all.
Nathan Leopold and Richard Loeb don't just settle for hunting fox, quail, or pheasant like their wealthy friends. These 2 young men, heirs to millions of dollars, hunt an innocent child.
Leopold and Loeb wait in a rented vehicle as 14-year-old Bobby Franks walks home.
The victim was chosen somewhat randomly. They circled around, looked for people coming out of the Harvard School for Boys, and Bobby Franks was in the wrong place at the wrong time.
They know Bobby from their tennis club.
Hey, Bobby, come on, I'll give you a lift. Hop in.
Oh, I can walk. I live just up the road.
I think the whole thing was about the thrill of plotting a kidnapping and murder, the thrill of actually luring Bobby into the car,
Come on, I want to talk to you about a tennis racket you had yesterday.
the thrill of being about to do a murder,
Once Bobby Franks is in the car, it's not long before the chisel comes out. Richard Loeb leans over that front seat and begins bashing the skull of young Bobby Franks.
Come here, arrogant little son of a bitch!
He lives for a while, longer than the boys expected him to. Eventually, Loeb grabs cloth, sticks it in the mouth of Bobby Franks, and he dies, either of suffocation or blows.
The clumsy murder is just the start to this imperfect crime.
The fact that these two young men were so very smart didn't really give them much of an advantage. I've seen dumb criminals who made fewer mistakes than these two kids.
They drag the body out of the car, bring it over to a drainage ditch. Nathan Leopold has to take off his jacket, which happens to have a pair of glasses in it at that time. They take out a bottle of hydrochloric acid and pour it over Bobby Franks's face and genitals in the hopes of disguising the body.
Heavy son of a bitch!
So Bobby Franks' naked, acid-ridden body is stuffed into that culvert and left.
Just let me do it.
They wanted Chicago to recognize that the perfect crime had been committed, and they wanted to sit back and watch as people tried to figure out how this crime was committed and who committed it. They wanted to sit back and laugh at the futility of the investigators.
Now, as they await trial, no one is laughing. They've completely tarnished the reputation of Chicago's elite.
The city is horrified. How could people of such a privileged position do such a thing? What's wrong with these families? What's wrong with our society that such a thing could happen?
Were these children of the rich so depraved they could resort to murder for entertainment? People are horrified. They demand justice, the death penalty. In Chicago, it is deemed the trial of the century.
The boys have the best defense money can buy. The famous attorney, Clarence Darrow.
He was very much against the capital punishment and wanted to use this case as a way of avoiding capital punishment. And at the time, this was easily as big as the O.J. Simpson case.
Darrow convinces Leopold and Loeb to plead guilty, so they avoid a jury trial. Next, he tries to convince the judge to spare their lives.
And I'm damned if I'm gonna let it happen now.
He views crime as always having a cause, and that cause is always rooted in the environment in which that criminal grows up. He blamed their wealth, he blamed their idleness, he blamed detective stories, he blamed anyone but the boys themselves.
The innovative defense doesn't work. Convicted of murder, the pair's lives are spared. But only because the judge thinks it useful to study the killers. Sentenced to life plus 99 years, Leopold and Loeb are sent to the same prison and continue their relationship until Loeb is slashed to death by another inmate.
Nathan Leopold went on to use his intelligence for good, fighting to improve the prison education system. He so impressed his captors that after 34 years, they let him free.
Leopold moved to Puerto Rico and lived quietly until 1971, when he died of a heart attack at age 66. Bobby Franks would have been 61.
Born into a world of money, these children grew into deadly offspring. Dana Ewell was possessed by an ice-cold greed. For Leopold and Loeb, it was all about ego. These sons of wealth played life as a lethal game, a quest to commit the perfect crime. Till next we meet, behind mansion walls, I'm Christopher Mason.